of a jewel, jewel, jewel. This is the making of a jewel, jewel, jewel.
Welcome back to the second episode of Making of a Jewel. In this episode, I'm going to take you back to how it started. How did it all begin? I mean, this is Joyce Lay you are seeing right now, and being a member of parliament, like I said, being married to a CEO. But how did it start? I was born in a little village in Taita Taveta, a village called Mariwenyi. I'm the seventh born in the family. My mom had, in total, she gave birth to like 13 children. Some of them, of course, passed away, and we remained 8 of us until recently one of us passed away. But it wasn't easy growing up in the village. When I tell people that I grew up in the Bundus, they think I'm a city girl. I'm not a city girl. I've gone through all the, the troubles in the village, growing up with no electricity, with no water. I remember we'll go fetch water. I mean, like almost 3 kilometers away. We carry water we bring to the house, and we go fetch firewood. So it was just a normal, village life. And sometimes you might be in that situation where you feel like there is no hope, like there's no future. But I'm right here, I'm a result of that. There's nothing that God cannot change. And throughout our lives, we knew that God was with us, because there are days that we would go hungry with no food. My dad then, he was police, working for police administration. And most of the time he wasn't home, so we were with my mom. And my mom taught me, when we talk about strength of a woman, my mom was a very, very strong person, because being left with all those kids in the house, and with, dad going away, and sometimes we don't even know when he's coming back. Sometimes he doesn't even send any money, for us to eat. And my mom would go do some, labor work for, some people in the village, like go wash clothes or go cut firewood and sell, to the community, so that we can get food. There are days like we'll just drink water and just go to bed. We were 3 girls. There was one that was like immediately after me, who passed away. But then we were 3 girls, like sleeping in one small bed, where like at night we'll just like fight for that blanket, because it was a small piece, and it was we were okay, we were okay, because now that was our family. And I remember in the entire village, I think we were the ones who were the most, poor people. Like other people maybe will have maybe a TV or will have meals, but we didn't. So we grew up knowing that sometimes you might go to school and you come back and there's no food. I didn't have shoes. I remember wearing my first shoe when I was when I was going to high school. That was the first time I wore my shoe. So the rest of the days were just, walking barefoot. And I had one dress. I remember it was yellow in color. And people used to call me Yellow because of the dress, and because I was so light-skinned, like I was almost yellow in color. So my elder sisters nicknamed me Yellow. So the rest of the days we'll be sent maybe to go take care of the shamba, or we'll be sent to go take care of the goats, my sister and I. I remember there was one of my sisters, the one that I followed like immediately. There was so much enmity between us that I could not understand. Even at some point I was asking Mom, are you sure this is our sister? That sibling rivalry. Maybe at some point we'll talk about that topic of sibling rivalry. And we would fight, like we would never agree on anything. And at some point I was like, what is it that I did to this girl? Kwani, it's not my fault that I was born. But there was that fight, and every time we would fight. At one point, she broke my leg. I had like a fracture. We were like playing around the compound, and she was busy like writing stuff on the ground. And apparently, while I was running with other kids, she said I stepped on whatever it is that she was writing, and I was running because I was running at a very high speed, and she held my leg, and I fell down and sat on it, and I cracked my leg. So that's part of my growing up story. So we used to fight, but the rest, the rest of my other brothers and sisters, we were very close. There was something that brought us so close. Growing up, my father was very violent. Like, we would not even sit in the same house with my father. When the rare days that he was at home, he was, because he would go like drinking and then comes home. So whenever we hear him coming, because when he's coming, he's drunk, he's singing. So even if we were eating food, we'll leave our food and rush and just go to bed and pretend that we're sleeping. We'll even sleep hungry that day because we were so scared. We could not face him. And sometimes he'd come home and he'll wake us up for no reason and just line us up. The same way you do with Mabusu Kojela, because those days administration police used to be called Askari Wajela. So the same way you'll do with Mabusu, he'll line us up and start asking, wewe umefanya nini leo? Wewe umefanya, you've not done anything. You'll just start crying. You're so scared. My sister used just to pee on herself when we lined up like that. And in the midst of all that, we would witness, violence. Would witness my mom, being beaten up, like it was like too much, Sometimes, he'll just find something. He'll be like, "Ini chakula gani umepika?" And that's it. My mom would be beaten. We'll see her like being pushed to the wall, and we were so little, we could not do anything. We could not help mom. So we were just there crying, she's crying, she's in pain. And we saw that for a long time. I remember outside our compound, we had a church. We had donated that land to church. And most of the nights, my brothers would sleep in church. They'll just, run away from the house. Sometimes they'll sleep in the toilet because it was just too violent. We did not experience love growing up, because when you are in domestic violence kind of, family, your mom is hurt. So definitely there's no love that she's able to give you. And then my father was like feared, like the whole village was like the children, the village, children, when they want to come to our house, watauliza, is your dad there? So if our dad is at home, they won't come. So the entire village, if there was some issue in the village, a case, not related to us, they'll always come and report to my father. It's like now, yeye ndiye alikuwa kama the chief of that area. Everyone, feared him. But somehow I was his favorite. In between all this, I was like, okay, what is this? He would call me a mzungu because my dad was light skinned, my mom was dark skinned, but then I was so light when I was young, so he'd call me mzungu wangu, kuja hapa. So he really loved me, and it's like he saw something in me at that early age that I did not see. Because now you're there struggling with, going to school, you're struggling with clothes, you're struggling with diseases. We had so many diseases. I remember there was a time I almost died from measles. I had wounds, my entire body. What you look at me right now and you say, hey, she's so pretty. This is a jewel processed already. But, the back of it wasn't good. So I had wounds all over my body. I think until now I still have some marks that were left. And that dress that I had, it was only one dress, which means I have to wash it at night so that I wear it the following day. And it was like polyester material. So when I'm taking off the dress, it comes out with the skin, pulling out the wounds, and it was so painful, I remember. And our relatives, our neighbors are the ones who used to, to give us clothes. So I had only that one dress. My brothers, they would wear shirts, my dad, because now they are long shirts so that they can cover their nakedness, because we didn't have money to buy clothes. And so it went on for a while, and being raised, in that kind of setup where you don't know what love is, where you don't have a mentor, no one is mentoring you. So I struggled to go to school. But in school, I was a very bright kid. Every time we did exams, I was either number one, number two, number one, number two, number one, number two. And there's this meme. It's not like a meme. There's this thing. Somebody started it saying, "Mwalimu wa math, ebu ona mahali nimefika sasa." But for me, I had a mwalimu wa math that saw something in me, and every time he would give an example using me, it's like, look at how Joyce is seated. She's looking, the way she's seated, it's like one day she's going to own a Mercedes Benz. So there's something that people would see in me that because of the environment that I was in, I could not see. Like right now, people tell me, "Oh, you're so pretty." I'm like, how comes I didn't know then? Because then you're in the village, you have only one dress, you don't even have underwear, you don't know if you're beautiful or not. So I grew up not having a mentor. I grew up not having support that I needed as a girl. I remember my elder sisters got married at a very early age. Actually, most of them did not go through school like I did, My brothers, some of them ran away from the house. And with that violence, when it continued, there was a point where my brothers now were big enough, like 18 and above. And I remember that particular day when my dad was like beating my mom. It was like on a Sunday. So mom is in church. He's come home and he's just making noise for no reason. And then he goes to church, inside church, and then drags my mom out, like literally dragging her on the street, beating her to the house. It was a terrible sight. But I remember that day when he got to the house, my brothers ran and they grabbed him and they said, "You know what? From today, you're not going to beat our mom again." And that, I think, scared off my dad. He realized, now my kids are old enough. So at some point he stopped. But then his presence wasn't there. His love wasn't there. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have people to talk to so that I can know what is it that I'm supposed to do as I'm growing up, as I'm going through, adolescence age. What is it that I need to know? What is it that I need to do? I didn't have somebody tell me, about boys and stuff like that. And so when it was time now for me to go to high school, for me it was like freedom, You've been removed from that toxic environment. So now you're out there. So I felt nice going to high school, because now I could get my first shoe. I could get, nice socks and stuff like that. And I was going to a boarding school. And because of lack of mentorship, you start seeing now the opposite sex. Because back way at home, because that time we could not mingle with boys. My dad was very harsh. We could not even talk to the boys in the village. I remember what I used to do, when it's holiday time. So we have those boys that are coming to the village. They're from Nairobi because they live in the city. So we used to admire them. So that time, I'll go clean up myself and put on my dress, and then I stand outside so that I can see them, so that they don't see my filthiness and stuff like that. But then we could not talk. So then I'm in high school, so I have the freedom. So now, you're being shown that kind of affection by this boy who was my first boyfriend. And, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, when I get to that particular stage, when I get to that moment where now you have the opposite sex showing, attention. What do you do? I didn't know. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I became, pregnant when I was 19 years old. So I was a very young mother. And that time I was towards the end of my Form 2. And because I knew the situation in the house, because I knew my dad, I was so afraid to face him. Even when I was pregnant, I didn't know I was pregnant. I'm in school, I'm pregnant, and I don't know. So the teachers start seeing some changes in me. The fellow students start seeing, and they're like, I think you're pregnant, And I remember some of the girls saying, oh, we can help you to do abortion. You can do this and that. So I remember this particular night, one of the girls said that I buy a whole packet of tea leaves, majani, and then I boil that with just 1 cup of water. Oh my goodness. I think until today I hate the taste of tea leaves. So I remember that night I was in the kitchen. During the that period in school, when I came in secondary school, at a very young age, I remember I was picked to be a head girl, and I was very young, being a head girl at a very young age, and then there are these big boys and big girls in school. So I was like, everyone's favorite. So I had a crush in school. The other boyfriend was not in the same school. So there's this guy, I had a crush, and that night I was going out to the kitchen to go and boil that majani that I was being told that it will help me to abort. There's so many things we need to talk about in this nation that we decide that we're not supposed to talk about them. As much as we know that it is wrong, but these things are happening. Our kids, our daughters, our girls, our sisters, they're going through so much out there. They're going through unsafe abortion, and most of them die, So I think at some point we need to have this conversation as a nation. What is it that we need to do? Sometimes we say, okay, it's lack of mentorship, but we've mentored enough girls, to a point where boys are feeling like they're being left out because we've emphasized on mentoring girls. But pregnancies still happen. It's not something we can say that we can avoid completely. But is there something that we can do? Is there like sex education that it is needed? I remember we had a bill that was brought in Parliament by in last Parliament, not last, but in the 11th Parliament, first by Senator Sijeni, and we were discussing about reproductive health bill. And there was so much uproar in the country saying that, we cannot teach our children about, sex and all that. But then we see reports that are being put out there that even girls are getting pregnant at 11 years old, at 10 years, at 15 years. So right now, currently there's another bill that has been introduced to Parliament, and still we hear of such noise that we cannot teach our children. So what is it that we need to do? I think it's a conversation that we need to have. We cannot continue burying our heads in the sand. So even as I share this story, we're going to run that campaign. We're going to reach out to girls who fall pregnant, maybe in school, and they think like, there's no hope in life. As I share my story, if you're out there and maybe you've gone through similar situation, I want to encourage you that that's not the end of your life. And I want to talk to the parents that are having children who are maybe pregnant at a very early age. Actually, this term that we use, that unwanted pregnancy, I think we need to do away with that. It's not unwanted. Yes, it came at a time where nobody was ready. It was not planned. But we cannot say it's unwanted, because when you say it's unwanted and you give birth to that child, do you look at that child as an unwanted child? So do you start hating that child? Because there are some situations that, women hate the children because, the child came because I wasn't ready. And also we have families that hide when their child is pregnant. Some of them are even maybe church members. They go and do secret abortion because they say you're bringing shame to our family. So when it happened, that night when I was going to the kitchen, I was told, if you boil these tea leaves and you drink, the pregnancy will be terminated. But I think it was already past that stage. That night when I was in the kitchen boiling the tea leaves, the guy that I had so much crush, he came. I don't know how he saw me. I don't know. Maybe one of the girls told him where I was. I really do not understand until today. And he came and found me in the kitchen alone. And because it was a bit dark, he raped me right there in school, in the school kitchen. And it wasn't a good thing for me, as much as it's someone that you liked, but then it was a forced thing that I was not even expecting. That's how it's supposed to be done. And because you are at a position where already you feel like, I've done a mistake already, I'm already pregnant, and if I tell even the teachers that I was raped, who is going to believe my story, So I did not tell anyone. I kept that story to myself, and I think this is the first time that I'm sharing this story. And I know there's so many people who carry such scars, so many people who have gone through such, and maybe they're traumatized until today. I want to ask if it's possible, find a safe space where you can share your story. And also, if you want to come to Making of the Jewel, to come and share your story, we welcome you to come and share. Sometimes women are, nobody wants to hear their stories. Nobody wants to believe their stories. You even sometimes turn into you are blamed that it was your fault that this thing happened. And so we keep those stories to ourselves, but then we hurt inside. And even later on, when you enter into a relationship, you won't be able to be, positive or productive because of what you are carrying, the scars that you're carrying inside you. So find a space that you can share, and so that you can heal inside. And you should not even blame yourself. You should not be angry with yourself. It's not your fault that it happened. It's not your fault. And so after I boiled whatever tea leaves, I drank, but nothing happened. So at some point I had to leave school because now the pregnancy was growing. I had to leave school. But then I was like, where am I going to go? I can't go home. I knew my dad was going to kill me. My dad had so much hopes in me. He kept on telling me, go to school, because you are the one who's going to take care of my family. And I could not understand. I was so young then. How would I take care of his family? And yet I had elder brothers and sisters. So at that point, I felt like I'd disappointed him completely. I could not face him. I knew that if I go home, he's going to kill me. So I had to run away. I ran away and I went to live with my cousin in Mombasa. I stayed there and I told her that she should not tell my parents that's where I was, because my dad will come and kill me. I stayed for a while, but during that time, my dad was also going through his own transformation. He had stopped drinking. He had even found Jesus. Unbelievable. He was even church leader. He was actually, those setups are SEK churches. They're called, lay reader or something like that. So he was one of the preachers in church, So he had gone through a lot of transformation, and at least there was peace in the house. So one day he sent for me. He said, let Joyce come home. And I remember when my dad called me to go home, I was so afraid. And I was like, if anything happens, I'm just going to kill myself. So I prepared my rope and I said, if it comes to, to that point, I'll just go and commit suicide and die while I was still pregnant. But then when I went home, I found a totally different person. And he embraced me. My dad embraced me, and I could not believe. And he said, you are my child, you are my daughter. He said, I want you to give birth, but after that, I want you to go back to school. So he pushed me to go back to school and continue with my education. And I want to talk to parents. I want to talk to girls that have gone through this experience, and maybe you decided this is it. No, it's not it. That was just like a pause in your life. You still have dreams. Pursue your dreams. You still, you still want to get to your goals and to the place that you've been dreaming about. Yes, you can. Getting pregnant doesn't mean that that's the end of it. You can still go back to your education. You can still finish your education. You can still go to the university. You can still get that dream job that you've always wanted. And you can still get married even in the future. So when I went back to school, I remember I went back to school, so it was Form 3, and then I was in Form 4. Just before now I get to a point where I finish my education on, Form 4, then my dad got sick. My dad had stroke. And now we needed all the money to make sure now he gets all the medical attention that he needed. That means that all of us actually who were in school then dropped. We dropped out from school because now there were no school fees. There was, nobody to help us. And I remember going to the hospital where my dad was, and the speech was a bit distorted and he could not speak clearly. And I just sat on that bed and cried. And I said, now this is the end of me, this is it. And I remember him telling me that, no, you have to go back to school. He repeated those words again. You have to go back to school because when I die, I will leave my family in your hands. I know my siblings don't believe that, but my dad said it. It was just me and my dad. There was nobody else. Those words, they put a lot of, burden on me. Because at that point, I could not understand how is it that I was going to be in charge of the family. I was the youngest. I didn't have, to me, there was no future. So at that point, because my mom is the one who was staying with my son, I had to look for jobs. I had to go and find, look for things that I can do, work that I can do, so that I can support my child and I can also support my mom. And because my dad was already bedridden, he could not move, he could not do anything. That time when my dad was sick, I think this is where I get my heart of forgiveness. I saw my mom take care of my dad as if nothing had happened to her. As if she didn't go through the trauma and the violence and the beating and the pain that she went through. Taking you back, I remember one time my mom left the house and I was left with the young siblings because the rest had already left home. I was the one now taking care of the children, cooking for them at a very young age. I had to take the chores, I had to take, the role to take care of my younger siblings. And at some point she would come back and she would say, you know what, I came back because of you, my children. I cannot leave you here to suffer. So she persevered all that so that we could have life. But then looking at it right now, I'm like, why would women go through that? Because there are some who would say, I can't leave my children. But yet you're in pain. Yet you're not happy. Yet you're being broken, you're being beaten physically. I want you to know that when you're hurt, when you're broken, there's no way you can be able to take care of your children. As much you'll decide to stay in that marriage, there's nothing positive that's going to come out so that you can help those children. If your husband is a beast, if he's violent and he's beating you up, that's not a marriage. That's not a relationship. You need to go. You need to run before we find you in a box. So my mom stayed. But then later on, when my dad became sick, she had to take care of him. She did not say, because you did this and this to me, then you are on your own. No, she stayed. And she took care of him. And my brothers came back. My younger brothers were the ones who are, cleaning up my dad, feeding him, We did not carry hatred. We did not hate my father. Despite of everything else that happened, we never hated him. So we never carried that bitterness or grudge. And they took care of him until the last day. So I had to go and find, some work to do. And who's going to employ you with no certificates, with no education? So the first job that I got was a house girl. So I went to work for someone's home. I remember my sister then was living in Mombasa, so I'd stay with my sister, then go to work. I'll go to work in the morning, I'll come back in the evening. So yes, I was a house girl. But it doesn't mean that because you are a house girl right now, that your life is nothing. No, look at me right now. Look at me. There's nothing that God cannot change.
This is the making of a jewel.